Welcome to the first episode of my top 100 albums of all time. In this video, we're going to be covering numbers 96 through 100. If you don't know what I'm doing, make sure you check the description and read the intro video about this whole series. But without further ado, let's dive in and let's see what I picked. Coming in at number 100 is By the Way by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, I've never really considered myself a big Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. Sure, I grew up with the bulk of their singles, like the stuff on Californication and all the radio hits before that, definitely from my era. That being said, Can't Stop was one of my all-time favorite songs in high school and got a ton of play on my iPod. And the titular song from this album, By the Way, has some kind of magical gravitational pull on me to this day. It wasn't until a few years ago that I actually sat down with this record and really dug into it. What many called Californication 2 because it came out after and it was extending some of those themes, I wholeheartedly disagree. I think this is far and away the best cohesive work of art that the Red Hot Chili Peppers have ever put out. Do you know why? Because God-tier guitarist John Frusciante wrote the majority of the album. His penchant for harmonies and really warm tones gave the Chili Peppers a sound that they hadn't quite achieved before in full, and put it over the entire album. The run of songs from the Zephyr song all the way through Cabron are amazing. That is one of the best runs of songs on an album I can think of. The album's closer, Venice Queen, is a perfect ribbon on an incredible journey. A journey that transcends what a band is known for and enriches their sound substantially. I think that this album is incredibly underrated compared to some of their big ones like Blood Sugar Sex Magic and Californication that get all the credit. I would love for this record to one day get a lo-fi pressing like some modern records have the pleasure of getting, like Beck's Sea Change or Weezer's Blue Album. Maybe one day. Number 99, Slow Dancing Society, The Sound of Lights When Dim. I've talked about this album quite a bit on this channel because I am absolutely in love with it. Slow Dancing Society was recommended to me by someone who also loved ambient music around the time that I was starting to get into it. I believe that the musical mastery of this record is largely responsible for me falling in love with this simple but challenging genre. Ambient music can often have warm or cool tones in it, and this album kind of swirls between them flawlessly. Evoking images of nature and seasons as the tones drone on, there's just an overwhelming element of beauty that a lot of ambient records strive to achieve, but Slow Dancing Society did in spades. I turned this record on to someone, a friend of mine who is the biggest ambient fan I know. His license plate on his car is ambient, and honestly, he knows more about the genre than anyone I've ever heard. He was floored by this. This isn't only good for longtime fans like him. Like I said, this is one of the best possible entry points for the genre if you're trying to get into it. It's super welcoming if you're patient enough to give it a chance, but you don't really need to give it repeat listens to really be drawn in. Also, this beautiful, clear pressing is just a wonderful touch on top of the gorgeous art and music. I think that this encapsulates the feeling of the album perfectly. Drew Sullivan, the guy who makes this music, and I actually became friends after I talked about this on the channel a bunch. We connected. He's an incredibly nice guy as well as talented. And he surprised me one day by actually sending me a test pressing of this record. This is easily one of the most cherished possessions I have in my catalog because this album means so much to me, and the fact that he thought I was worthy of having one, that's amazing. So thank you, Drew, for all the music and for this test. Number 98, Yeasayer, Odd Blood. This was a staple of my college years. It came out in 2009. I re-listened to it and it still holds up. Track after track hits so hard, it is unbelievably catchy and complex. Every single song puts a giant smile on my face. A review I read actually praised the album for its jungle-dense beats and rainbow synths, and that is the perfect way to describe this record, so I just wanted to mention that line. Brilliant. This is Yeasayer's magnum opus. They released some good records after this, but honestly, Odd Blood is their best record, I believe, to date. Ambling Alp, the single, was a bona fide indie anthem in 2010, but the rest of the album does not fall short by any means. From the cloudy yet reflective I Remember to the explosive boogie of O.N.E to the frantic dance hall that is Rome, this album takes you in all sorts of sonic directions. This album is psych pop perfection with a hint of world music and a whole lot of charm. This isn't a really hard record to track down, so I recommend you giving it a listen and then buying it before one day it goes out of print and all of a sudden people realize how amazing it is and it starts going for triple digits. I hope it's not the case, but I've seen it happen before. Also, worth mentioning is that this cover is a distorted stone bust. Very vaporwave. Could this be the first vaporwave album? Maybe that's a topic for another video, but 2009, that was well before Macintosh Plus came out. Number 97 is the XX self-titled album, The XX. There's not really anything here. I'm lying. The XX have not missed in their 3-album run. Each record is good in its own way, but I truly believe that they peaked at their first record, which is not a great thing for their trajectory, but it's a great thing for us to have this album to listen to. Jamie XX is a stellar producer. He has proved himself through a multitude of albums and singles after the XX's debut, but this is where he kind of started to perfect his signature sound. The twin vocalists brood all over the beats in a really sultry, entrancing way. The atmosphere is unparalleled. I can't think of anything that quite captures what the XX vocals do for me. Lyrically, the album touches a lot on love and loss, very relatable things, but it's also very intimate, like almost something you're not supposed to be privy to, but you're kind of eavesdropping on. Here's a pro tip from my college years. If you sync this album up with the Underwater Planet Earth episode, turn the music off of Planet Earth, it is just the perfect match. So this is one of the few records on my list of 100 I do not own, and I'll explain why. I owned a record in the past that was a random pressing, and it sounded terrible, so I sold it. And eventually I tracked down the holy grail of pressings from this record, a 200-gram double disc gatefold pressing that was only limited to 500 from some art installation when it came out. It comes with signed photographs of the band members. Unfortunately, the cover was a little too beat for me, so I ended up selling that as well. One day I'd like to stumble upon that again, but it goes for a couple $100s, and I gotta get lucky. Until then, I keep reading that the first US press is actually the best sonically. Just tracked one of those down. It should be on the way to me. Making this list made me realize I don't own this anymore, and I need to, because obviously it's in my top 100. And then one day I'll find a mint copy of that gatefold one again. But if you don't know this record, you gotta check it out. And number 96, the final record for this video, is Lights, Siberia Acoustic. Lights is one of those artists that you either love or don't know about. There's not really an in-between. Her fan base is extremely rabid and loyal, and most people that listen to her really enjoy her once they discover her. Unfortunately, for some reason, even though she's had a decade-plus long career, she hasn't quite reached the levels of worldwide fame in the sense of some of her contemporaries like Charlie XCX or Churches or other synth pop ladies of this style. Her synth pop albums are infectious, fun, bouncy, just a really good time, really well written, very well produced. But what she does that's unique is that for every record she puts out, she actually does an acoustic accompaniment. The songwriting on the original album Siberia is delicate yet very strong, and also very relatable, but sometimes under the high production of electronic kind of synth pop album, that gets lost in the mix. With an acoustic guitar and piano, these songs are really given the room to breathe and soar in the way that they intended to. Every single track is beautiful and wistful in their own right, and this is just a wonderful listen front to back. Peppered with some really good features like Cour du Pirate, which I can't pronounce because it's French and I always screw it up, Owl City, and Max from Arcles on the titular track Siberia. There's not too many features to not give her the room to kind of show off what she's made of, but the features add a lot of nice color to an already perfect album. I always really enjoyed her music, but I never had this record until recently. I stumbled upon it at a local record store for $20. Now, that's before I saw that it wasn't just the also out of print black variant. No. This is the limited first press on white vinyl, hence the name Siberia, and I could not believe that it was $20. I mean, you gotta add another zero to that for it to be what it usually goes for. When I spun it, I couldn't believe how nice the pressing sounded. I would say that this is one of those records that actually brings you closer to the album when you listen to it on vinyl. Because of that, it definitely makes my top 100. Also, I got to meet her at Comic-Con a few years ago, and she was promoting the graphic novel she made in conjunction with her latest album, Skin and Earth. She was so nice, and it was so cool to meet her, so that only helps my case. Alright guys, that was the first installation. I've definitely given you a lot to listen to. Leave a comment with your thoughts on my picks. You can continue guessing future picks on this list if you'd like, and there'll be more coming out soon, so look forward to the next installation. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to Too Many Records. Talk to you soon.